Story 1. I used to work for a security alarm company in their dispatch office. I would receive signals like burglary, fire, silent panic, or maintenance needed notifications and follow our policy on responding. One of the highest priority alarms are silent panic alarms like you might have at a bank or a jewelry store. The thing about panic alarms is that we have very strict rules on how to respond. If someone calls, verifies their identity, and gives the cancel code, we can't just cancel our immediate police notification. We don't know if someone is holding a weapon or otherwise threatening, and unless an account has specific instructions to do so, we never call anyone but the police, not even the account owner, until after the police have responded. One day, a man calls in because his alarm system won't arm. He's getting a trouble signal, just a low battery from panic alarm #2. His system won't arm until that trouble signal is cleared, and we usually suggest people have spare batteries on hand, but it seems he didn't feel that was necessary. I let him know that we can send our on-call person out, or he can try picking up supplies from a battery store, but he just wants to go home. He's getting very frustrated, but there's genuinely nothing I can do from my end to bypass a panic sensor and arm his system as he demands. Eventually, he says, "I'll just smash it and go home." I try to tell him that'll set off the panic alarm, and he uses some loud and unkind language before hanging up. Seconds later, panic #2 is triggered. Per our policy, I called the police, gave them dispatch information, and then sat back, feeling satisfied with my response. It continued to feel satisfactory even 5 minutes later, when he called back, infuriated that the police had shown up at his store for a panic alarm. I explained to him that something set off his panic alarm, and we must respond to all of those with the same urgency, since we never know what's happening on the other side. He wasn't pleased, but eventually, we were able to reach our on-call technician to fix the panic button, which not only had a low battery, but also physical damage that required it to be replaced. Story 2. I work in a major pizza delivery chain that has so far been unsuccessful in out-pizzaing the competition. Our store is in a college town, and everyone is bored as can be right now for obvious reasons. So we've gone from maybe one prank call a day to at least 3-5, which isn't much but still really annoying with how much more business we've been getting, again for obvious reasons. The worst part is how uncreative and low effort most of them are. At least 80% of them are, "Can I get a boneless pizza?" or "Is this the Krusty Krab?" with the occasional insertion of a popular fast food order copypasta. This had been going on for far too long, so I took up the habit of just hanging up whenever someone starts saying some silly things. The boss wasn't too happy about this, but didn't care enough to say anything until an incident where I hung up on someone who wanted that boneless pizza, and he called back, upset because he actually wanted to order. So I get a stern talking to from my boss, and he sends a message to the company's group chat app saying, "I know we've been getting more prank calls than usual, but please don't follow in certain people's footsteps and just hang up on them. Take the calls as seriously as possible. If they order something we can't make, calmly explain it to them and offer them something we do actually sell. We want to try to make money off of them, even if they're acting silly." So the very next call is where the fun starts. "Thank you for calling. What can I get you?" "I'm so hungry. Can I get an extra large pizza with triple every topping?" "I'm sorry, ma'am. We can only go up to one extra and double each topping." "Okay then. Can I get 20 XLS of each meat y'all have? So like 20 pepperoni, 20 sausages, etc." These people are obviously high on some recreational substance and giggling in the background the whole time. "Sure, give me a sec to ring it all up." "Okay, so that's 180 pizzas. The total will be $1,000. Don't remember the actual price, but close enough, and it'll take about 3 hours. "Awesome, thanks. We'll pay with a check when we get there." Dial tone *. So I place the order, and not 30 seconds later, I hear, "What the heck?" from the boss, and he runs to the computer. "How are they paying for this?" he asks me. They said with a check. We do still take checks for orders over $200, right? They can't have been serious. Was this a prank call? Not sure. Boss, you said take all calls seriously. He just grumbles and picks up the phone to call the customer, and all I hear is super loud laughter as he hangs up. Meanwhile, other employees have started actually making the ridiculous order, not noticing anything weird about it. So by the time the boss finishes the call and cancels the order on the computer, there are already 5 XL pepperoni pizzas in the oven. So we got free dinner for everyone working that night, as well as another message in the group chat app simply saying, "In regards to my last message, please just use good judgment when taking orders." Story 3. My dad's words from years ago when I started a discussion with my mom over some dumb prejudice comments she made on social media. Social media brings out the worst in my mother, who in real life used to be a lovely woman, but over the years got lost in her echo chamber of foolishness. I tried getting her out, but I'm not going to get involved in my mom's social media stuff. Today, there was an illegal protest in my city. A protest organized on social media by the lowest of the low in our society. We have a group of about 100 delusional individuals in the country who are actually willing to get from behind their keyboards and disrupt public transport in my city any opportunity they can get in the name of the people. My parents, not a part of the 100, but seemed to be well on their way, went to today's protest, which was illegal. They were told to separate and leave, but they didn't, and they got arrested. They didn't have any form of identification on them, so they were not allowed to leave. My dad called for the first time this afternoon, asking me to go to their place, pick up the IDs, and then go to the police station. I asked if this was about the social media event. He said yes, and I said, "I'd better not get involved then," hung up, and ignored his next 17 calls. My aunt apparently went to pick them up later tonight, and everyone's upset with me, saying I'm a traitor, except for Grandma, who called to say she misses me, and I haven't been able to get the grin off my face. Story 4. My friend told me this story, and it was just too good not to share. So the town we live in has lots of good old-fashioned British pubs, and one that is a pub during the week and then turns into sort of a club on the weekends, since it's the only place open past 12 over 1 am. It tends to attract a lot of intoxicated troublemakers. My friend was working one night with 2 other bar staff, one other guy and an attractive young woman. It was about 11:55 p.m., and a guy walked up to the bar. My friend wasn't serving anyone at the time and went to take his order. "No thanks, mate, I'll wait for her." My friend tried to explain that she was serving customers at the other end of the bar and that he would be the one to take his order. "No, I am only getting served by her, no one else." "Sure, mate, no problem." My friend then waits for his colleague to finish serving her existing customer, and by the time she's done, it's around 11:57 p.m. So my friend turns to her and says, "Hey, you've only got 3 minutes left of your shift, so you might as well leave now, we've got it covered." So she leaves. My friend and the other guy working both refuse to serve him for the rest of the night, as per his request. Story 5. This might be a rarity for this subreddit, as I am the one who had the malicious compliance done to by someone else, but I have to respect it and thought it was worthy for this subreddit. Context: I own an escape room company in a town that borders a pretty touristy area and is very close to an airport. As such, we tend to get a lot of bookings from people all over the country who are visiting the area for the weekend or international people coming to do an escape room on their way to the airport. We only take online bookings and don't accept walk-ins, so the site is only really staffed whenever we have bookings. As such, our cancellation policy is that we only allow refunds if the cancellation is more than 24 hours before the scheduled start time. If it is 24 hours before the start time, we can only reschedule the booking. Now, it's worth mentioning that for the majority of cases weekdays, we are pretty relaxed with our policy as long as it doesn't cause any major issues and try our best to accommodate a group, as usually, I am the one hosting them, so there's not any additional expenses on our part, that is, staff wage loss of income from other potential customers. However, the only day where this policy is really relevant is on Saturday, where we are almost always entirely booked from morning to night and have staff members working for us. Any canceled slots would most likely have been filled by other customers, and we are, of course, still paying our staff for that time. Although I must say, we have only ever had to enforce this policy a couple of times, as we usually accommodate a group in some shape or form. Now onto the malicious compliance. So I got a call earlier today from a gentleman with a thick Scottish accent who was scheduled to come in with his group in around 2.5 hours from the time of the call. The group said that they would be unable to make their booking as they were running late with some other activities or something like that, and asked to reschedule the booking for a later slot. I checked our schedule but didn't have any slots left for today in any of our rooms. He then asked for a refund as they would be returning to Glasgow tonight and didn't know when they would be next down here. I told him our policy and that our system only allows rescheduling instead of refunds due to the time frame, and explained that given it's a Saturday, we can't refund so close to the time as staff has been arranged, and slots would have been booked. Rescheduling wouldn't have worked for them as they wouldn't be in the area anytime soon. After a short pause, he asked if we had any free slots to schedule for next month. I checked the system and offered to move the booking to the same time on November 16th, to which he said, "Yeah, I think that works." I changed the time on the system and informed him he would get an email confirming the new time slot. He replied, "Great, so the booking is more than 24 hours away now, right?" Me: "Yes, it's booked in for 4 weeks from today." Him: "Right, so the booking is more than 24 hours away. I won't be able to make it. Can I have a refund?" I paused for a second, trying to process what had just happened in my head, and realized that he had found a loophole in the system. Technically, his booking was more than 24 hours away, so he was technically entitled to a refund. I started laughing and congratulated him on beating the system as I processed his refund. Story 6. This happened when I was 15. My mom was, let's be real, she probably still is a mentally, emotionally, and physically abusive narcissist. Some highlights are when she was teaching my twin sister and me to read at the age of 4 or so. It was around 2 a.m., and my sister was having trouble learning, so my mother's solution was to beat her with a shoe every time she got a flashcard wrong. The same thing happened when my mother had me transcribe an essay she had written to my handwriting when I was 7. Every time I started a letter from the wrong position, like starting a capital M from the bottom line, she would beat me with one of her sandals. This too happened later at night, so when I got too exhausted from the fatigue and pain, she would drag me by the neck and literally throw me into a cold shower to wake me up so we could continue the waking nightmare. When I was 13, I told her that I wanted to live with my dad. They were divorced, and she told me she didn't care what I did after I turned 18. I later figured out that this was because the child support payments stopped at age 18. Anyway, fast forward to age 15. Our relationship was understandably strained. We had had guests, and she liked to use guests as a way of controlling our behavior through shame. It's easier to be an angsty teenager when your grown-up friends from church aren't watching and judging everything you do. This made it easier for her to pretend to be a firm but loving mother, all while slipping in sideways comments like veiled daggers. Well, I decided I wasn't going to subject myself to the whole thing and spent the day outside in the woods nearby. We lived in the mountains at the time, so it was less than 100 feet from the house. When I saw our guests had left, I went to go back inside. My mother, perhaps unhappy at being denied a day-long emotional abuse routine, told me I wasn't welcome and that I should leave. My 15-year-old brain heard her words and knew that she only meant for a little while, but it also recognized that she failed to specify any time frame at all. So, I hiked a couple of miles to a friend's house and asked if I could spend a couple of days there. When my friend's dad found out why I was there, he was upset and said I could stay as long as I needed. I didn't go home that evening or the next. My mom became concerned and contacted law enforcement to report me missing. This is a big deal for several reasons. We lived in the mountains on a national park, so it was a very real possibility that I had been attacked by a wild animal, become injured while hiking, drowned, or been kidnapped. Nobody knew of my mother's abusive tendencies or the squalor and neglect my sister and I lived in. Most importantly, the law enforcement was the local park rangers with whom she worked daily. Lee immediately contacted my dad's side of the family to see if I had turned up there or contacted them. They promptly panicked and came to my house with lawyers on standby. Lee then hired dogs to track my scent, and then everyone freaked out because the dogs tracked me to a nearby river where my trail died because the dogs couldn't pick up any more scent. Over the next couple of days, there were people going in and out of my house, rangers, lawyers, my family, etc. and several noticed the overpowering scent of cleaning chemicals. But only the lawyer considered why a clean house would reek of chemicals. They started to canvass the nearby woods and neighborhood. My friend's dad came to me and asked if there was somewhere else I could stay. He told me that he would kick me out if he didn't want to have to lie to the police or let the dogs on his property. My friend and I figured we'd just go camping for a week or so. But instead, I looked up my dad's side of the family and called them, and they picked me up right away. Understandably, everyone had questions. When I told them what was happening, the lawyers, horrified, pounced. A judge issued an emergency change of custody and prevented her from gaining custody until she underwent a psychological evaluation and therapy, which my mother would never allow. The rangers, equally horrified, completely shunned my mother, and she eventually lost her job. Since she was only allowed to live in the park because she worked there, she was kicked out of her house. My friend's father and the trackers were members of the local community and churches, and they too shunned my mother. She lost her job, her house, her church, and her friends all because she told me to leave, and I did.